allow me to simply say that it is a deep honor for me to join this conversation with Congresswoman Lenny, with Attorney Nepo, with Ms. Nadia, and with Secretary Bobby. My first question has to do with, let me take off from the last question of the first session. This has to do with the political context. A week from now, President Aquino will be delivering his 5th State of the Nation address. Why are we still talking about the prospective passage of an FOI law? Why still? I'd like everyone to pitch in, but who would like to start? Congresswoman?
Good morning, everyone. I think this is very ripe, overripe for discussion, considering that the 5th SONA is forthcoming, because the public clamor is stronger than ever. I do not know if anyone here attended the daylight event in Malacanang last Tuesday, but there was a direct question to the President with regards to the passage of the FOI. And he said in no uncertain terms that he would ensure, and he is assuring everyone, that the FOI will be passed before the end of his term. If it is any consolation, it is an assurance for us advocates that there will be no hindrances along the way as far as the executive is concerned. But I think with all the controversies sounding us right now, everyone is pointing to the non-passage of the FOI as the culprit. So indeed, there is a very strong clamor.
Attorney?
Well, of course, everyone would have wanted the FOI law to have passed. Not even this presidency, but even before. The first FOI bill that passed the committee at the House of Representatives was as early as 1987 by then Representative of Camarines, Representative Raul Rocco, who was already passed away, and many of us have already had probably families after long after that time. And but let me just state that for advocates of the right to information and the passage of a Freedom of Information bill, every time is a good time to pass it. And we feel that we are happy with what was mentioned by Rep. Lenny, that it was mentioned by the President in response to a direct question at the Daylight Forum, giving assurance that it will pass within his term. I think this was the first time he has directly made that assurance again after his oath of office, because his first assurance of prioritizing it happened a few days prior to his oath of office, and after that it has not been mentioned since. I think that we are seeing several positive developments in the past few months. One is, it was mentioned, I think, in the discussion that open data is going to be discussed. The open data relates to government's open government initiatives of proactively disclosing government data, particularly budget information and local government information. And for a time, the government's statement has been that, well, they support the FOI, passage of FOI law, but it is up to Congress to pass it. And in any case, we are practicing the principles of right to information through our proactive disclosure of information. And we have always argued that proactive disclosure of information and request-based access has to come hand in hand. And we are happy that there's been a pronouncement by the spokesperson of the President, Secretary Lecerda, that they have come to a decision to integrate open data standards into the FOI bill. And so to us, it's being talked about now. even so many years from 1987, because the demand for the passage of the Freedom of Information Act has not waned even for all those times. In fact, it might have become more urgent, and we see this as the last 2 years as a window. In fact, not the last two, but the last year as a window, because we all know that the last year will be a presidential election year, and so it has to be treated with some urgency, I believe.
Thank you. Nadia, your journalist's perspective.
You know, I think it's a matter of, thank you. You know, I think a lot of it is a matter of walking the talk. You know, the president gave his assurance. Now everyone would be waiting to see if he would actually certify this as an urgent bill. You know, we are a country we are proud of our people power, of our democracy. A lot of good words, a lot of good concepts, but the fact that we are still debating having this kind of law in this day and age will tell you a lot about the contradictions in this country. So why it has not been certified as urgent as yet, I would think has a lot to do with, you know, we do a lot of talking. You know, it's a matter of, it's about time we do a lot of doing, so to speak.
Thank you. Secretary, about the view
I
of-
have the easiest part here. All I can say is I agree with all of them.
That's the
No, your question was why has it been dragging on? I could only speculate since I don't know for sure. And I could speculate about bad faith, and I could speculate about good faith. If I were to speculate about bad faith, then I could say that, well, hiding information for the purpose of connivance has been an important feature of government in the Philippines for a long time, and that's not the easiest thing to knock out. Hiding one's SALN is something that people can defend on the grounds that you will discourage more people to go into government if you have to display your SALN every time you join government. And of course, it's like extracting teeth. If I were to take it from a good faith, then I would say that we shouldn't approach freedom of information like motherhood. The devil is always in the details. And I think, as it was expressed earlier, while it may be in the Constitution, once you get down to specifics, then there are many things perhaps that need to be balanced out, such as issues of national security, such as exceptions, such as who's really going to divulge information, what mechanisms are you going to put into place? Now, these are not the easiest things to debate. We, looking at the Freedom of Information Bill, for example, it is not yet clear who is the final arbiter of what information to disclose. There is, of course, a provision of presumption that information must be disclosed, but there are also processes in there that say that if a denial is made, a defense about the denial has to be forwarded. On the other hand, if information is being asked, which may be deemed to be not relevant, it is up to the person asking for the information to defend why he's asking it. Now, if you have two defenses, you have to have an arbiter. We in the business community, on the other hand, think that all of these things have been discussed almost to death for quite a number of years now, which is why we think the time has come for all good citizens to look at the details, some of us have seen them, and to decide that we have to put one foot forward in order for us to get going. And there has been enough debate, we feel, to side towards the idea that more information is better than less. The truth will set you free is a higher value than thinking that excessive information could lead to paralysis by analysis. And we also think that the window of opportunity for being able to pass this bill is getting narrower and narrower. You can speculate about the next administration and so forth, But we've debated this, the time has come. The president has always said that he would want to institutionalize reforms. He's got an excellent chance to do it now, and we would really want him, as you put it, make it a priority bill and get it passed along the lines that he said on deadlines during last Monday's Daylight Dialogue.
Thank you. Attorney, I did not realize that it was then Congressman Rocco who started the ball rolling. I guess we need the right representative from Bicol to push FOI. I'd like to get back to this political context in a few minutes, and we'll also have time to discuss some of the details of the bills in the Senate and in the House. But I would like to root our discussion of the FOI by asking you if an FOI law had already been in place in 2006, how would the pork barrel scam have played? What would have been the difference if it were already in place in 2006? Attorney?
Well, I'd like to liken the FOI bill, if it is passed, to an asset that you can give to every citizen. The right to information is a right of every citizen of the country, and in fact, it's regardless of your age, your gender, wherever you are situated geographically. And as mentioned already, the Freedom of Information Act, the proposed Freedom of Information Act, does not seek to give the right or create the right to information because it is already in the Constitution. Neither does it seek to enable the right to information under the Constitution because the Supreme Court has already said it is by itself self-executory. In other words, every citizen who is denied information can seek the assistance of the courts to compel disclosure of information. But it was also said earlier that making that right, which is already there, far more predictable and effective would require the substantive and procedural details to complement the constitutional guarantee. And among those that are mentioned was the clarification of the scope of accessible information and what may be withheld through a limited list of exception rather than go on a case-by-case basis every time to the Supreme Court. And once you go to the Supreme Court, you know that see you in 3 years for whatever information you are asking for. And secondly, the procedure for accessing information and how every information is to be dealt with. Under RA 6713, it was flashed there that it has to be given within a reasonable period of time. But there is also another section that states requests should be responded to within 15 working days, but a response can be a mere acknowledgement of your request and nothing more. And then the remedy. What I'm saying is that there would have been an asset available to every person where request for information will be responded to with more predictability at that point. And it's not just a simple private citizen, it can be an investigative journalist. If you would look at PCIJ's report now, for example, on DAP, the request for information on DAP has been 9 years. It had to 9 months and running. It had to take that recent controversy in that speech to have just the lump sum aggregates disclosed. And you will have to go much, much deeper than that to be able to pinpoint if there was an anomaly.
Sorry if I
Yes.
sound like I'm oversimplifying the issue, but Senator Poe in her keynote did say that transparency kills corruption. My question is, would the pork barrel scam, and much of the evidence comes from 2007 to 2009, still have happened if FOI, let's say House Bill 32 37 was already in the statute books, would it still have happened, Congresswoman?
I think things would have played differently. Because in a sense, government officials would have been more deliberate in identifying projects. I do not know if you are familiar with PDAF, but when PDAF was still there, senators were given 200 million for projects. The money is not really given to senators, but they can identify projects of their choice. Projects amounting to 200 million. Congressmen can recommend projects up to 70 million pesos. And if you look at the projects before, which were under PDAF, there were really projects which were very political in nature. In my own district, for example, only barangay captains, only mayors who were supportive of the congressmen were given projects in their respective geographical areas. Not only this, these projects were not really development-oriented. These were projects which bears the name of congressmen. These were projects which were more visible but less important. That is not to say that there were also projects which made it to the list but did not make it to the actual cut. If FOI was already in place in 2006, I think we would have prevented so much of this. I cannot say for sure that the PDAF scam could not have happened because, as they say, greed is a very powerful enemy. But I would like to think that we could have prevented so much of what has happened because of FOI. If we had FOI, people would have information as to how their senators or how their congressmen were identifying the projects, allotted to them by means of the PDAF. They would have had a say in whether or not the projects identified were actually responsive to their needs. They would have, people would have had the opportunity to wonder why only a few number of NGOs were actually PDAF agents or PDAF recipients. But because we did not have this information available, we were not able to react at all. So maybe it is safe to say that so many things would not have happened if we had FOI already.
Nadia?
I think the answer would depend on how responsible, how enterprising media is at that time, say 2006. I say this because I think the Freedom of Information Act is only as effective as the kind of media you have in your society. Raw information, raw data, for example, would be there. It would be accessible. The media would have more responsibility to actually interpret this data because it is, as you say, it's free, it's there, the information is there, but the responsibility of digesting information still lies on journalists who are presumably responsible and will actually take the time to not just do an event reporting, but to actually dig through information available.
Just to put things in perspective, by 2006, Janet Lim Napoles would have appeared on the radar screen at least twice. 2001 or so for the Kevlar deal, 2004 for the fertilizer fund scam. So it's possible. That's what you're saying, right?
It is possible, but a lot of it still rests on the kind of media that is there, on how information like these are digested, how we make sense of data, how we make sense of budget reports, where the money goes. If we actually know where to look and take time to actually look.
Attorney, wouldn't it be also correct to say that, in fact, one of the objectives of a freedom of information law is for us citizens not to depend too much on the media, right?
Yes, that's correct. The right to information, as I mentioned, is a citizen right. It's available to everyone. And in fact, I think both citizens organization and even citizens individuals, because the use for information can be personal need for information, whether let's say it's in pag-ibig, GSIS, SSS, which are mainly on a personal basis level of information. But there are ordinary citizens and associations of citizens also that are looking at information not from a personal need perspective, but also from its public concern perspective, whether it's for accountability, for public participation in decision making. But it's really the realization of how much power with the asset I mentioned will there be if you would compare the situation now of having a right to information without a partner Freedom of Information Act. The rights is the right to information is scaled up much higher with the predictability, and over time that asset and power that will be in the hands of the citizen will just grow over time, and its capacities to strategically change, as mentioned by Rep. Lenny Robredo, to change probably the outcome, probably not in the scale that it would stamp out, let's say, corruption on an overnight basis, but strategically, I think it makes us in a better position as citizens, not just the media, to make government to account.
Thank you. Thank you for indulging me in this bit of counterfactual history. I have a couple of questions for Congresswoman Woman Lenny. We heard Senator Grace Poe enumerate 9 or 10 highlights of her bill, SB 1733. Some of those highlights, your bill shares, for example, legal presumption of the request. But some are not shared. For example, she mentioned criminal penalties. They are much more specific in her bill. Can you quickly walk us through the highlights of House Bill 3237?
You know, House Bill 3237 is just one of the 24 versions in the House. In fact, I am one of the latest who went into the fray. Most of the other authors have been fighting for FOI since the 9th Congress, I think. Essentially, my version and that of the other versions in the House and that of the Senate are the same. We only differ in, let us say, for example, my version states that the response time should be 15 days. The other version says 10. My version says that government should be given a 2 or 3 year capability building period for government entities, while the other versions don't have it. But essentially, all the versions are the same, including with the Senate version. The only additional provisions that we are trying to introduce in my version is the open data version. We are set to introduce 3 more provisions, and our chairman George Almonte, promised that he will author these 3 additional provisions himself. But essentially, my office was the one who drafted these 3 provisions, which I think will provide a more enhanced version of the FOI, in the sense that if FOI is more demand-driven, the open data provisions will make the FOI more supply-driven. It will be more supply-driven in the sense that even without request, government will already be obliged to upload and make available information that are important. If the information uploaded by government is not there, that is the time private citizens will make the request. But once private citizens make the request and once information is made available to one, then that information will already be made available to all.
Is that one of the three provisions?
Yeah, it will be one of the three provisions. So one provision will make FOI more supply-driven than demand-driven. The other one is if the kind of information being requested is not uploaded yet, then it will be like the former FOI we're in. Any one of us can make the request. But the additional provision is that once that kind of information is uploaded, then it will be already available to all. This answers the anxiety of many government offices that once FOI is approved, all they will ever have to do is answer requests. Most of them claim that they do not have the capacity, they do not have people, they do not have the technical expertise to be answering all these requests. But we think with the introduction of the open data provisions, in a very huge way, that particular anxiety will already be answered in the sense that during the capacity building period, government will already be required to not only to capacitate itself, but will already be required to upload all important information. You have been dragging our heels in the House of Representatives. We agree to that. Attorney Nepo has been in this fight far longer than I have been. One of the reasons is that there are more than 30 authors. Tama ba, Attorney Nepo? More than 30. We have 24 versions, and some of the versions have many authors. And all of these authors are participating in the technical working group deliberations. We have been meeting every month already, but we have had so many debates. It will be interesting to sit down in one of the technical working group sessions. One word gets discussed 4 hours. It is true that it has been dragging for a long time. Most of us FOI advocates have been very impatient about this. There have been many discussions. There have been many heated debates already. But the good thing is that it is moving. We are just in Section 7. And this is proving to be the most contentious section in the sense that it is an enumeration of all the exceptions to the FOI. We hope that when we get passed through Section 7, it will be a lot faster. But it is very different in the House compared to the Senate in the sense that in the House we have 290 plus members. In the Senate, there are only 24 of them. The Senate has passed, the FOI in the Senate has passed through third reading during the 15th Congress. And the rules of Congress says that if a bill already gets passed through third reading during the previous Congress, it won't have to be taken down again, taken up again during committee deliberations. In the House, this is the first time that the FOI is being discussed really seriously. I believe Attorney Nepo was there already during the 15th Congress. I believe that they had more difficulties during the 15th Congress. They couldn't even get rooms to use for committee hearings. Those kind of problems. I know it is impossible, but it happened. It is not happening now. It was a little rough at the start, but now it's moving. We are very hopeful that within the year, it gets passed through the committee level and will be up for plenary already.
Yeah, I think Speaker Belmonte said he's ready to be hanged if the bill does not become law. Speaking of Section 7, can you just, again, very quickly, walk us through the way the House would probably discuss this following provision in the Senate bill? In the Senate bill, I found, this is going to sound like special pleading because I'm a journalist, but there is a provision there that says there's a penalty for, let us say, the Edward Snowdens of the Philippines. Okay? This penalty is not in the administration bill submitted in 2013. It's not in your bill, but it's in the approved on third reading, Senate bill. And it says there will, government officials who will also divulge or release information covered under Section 7 will be penalized.
I
All
think
right.
it's in the version of Representative Malu Acosta,
Yes.
the sister of Secretary Nerik. It's in her version. We have not gone past through that particular provision yet, but I think Attorney Nepo will be in a better position to predict how Congress will react to that.
I am never a good predictor of how Congress responds to these things. But insofar as the Right to Know Right Now coalition is concerned, we have expressed our concern over that particular provision. We believe that in fact, we are happy that I've not seen I think the bill of Representative Acosta has been filed quite late, but in all of the versions, it's not been there, and we hope that the bicameral conference will have an opportunity to revisit that provision, penalizing the disclosure of exempt information, also from the perspective of users of information and not just from a government side. There is already an existing penalty under the revised penal code for government officials to disclose confidential information, and that penalty requires even a damage to public interest for the penalty for public officials divulging this confidential information.
So perhaps it's not necessary.
The bill in the Senate does not even include a damage to public interest. So even just a confidential information that is divulged, even if it is without any damage to public interest, will make. So I think it will be a concern for the media, that provision.
Secretary, I have a question about the possible economic or financial costs of the non-passage of FOI. Is this law essential enough that if it is not passed within the window of opportunity, you were saying maybe just the next year, would the stock market reflect a certain kind of disappointment? Would our credit ratings be under threat? I mean, would there be consequences?
Right now, the Philippines is on, you might say, a favorable upward trajectory in the perception of many of the investors, both local and foreign. But the business community, nevertheless, has always suffered from a number of business and government relations in this country that tend to diminish what businessmen consider quite important. Number one, predictability. Number two, rules-based decision-making. And of course, number three, objectivity of decisions. So it is felt by many who are maybe still adapting a wait-and-see attitude towards the Philippines in spite of the glorious reports of its economic performance over the past years, that will be watching out for the Freedom of Information Bill because they are looking at it as a very important tool to be able to diminish the practices that made business a bit chancy in this country as compared to others. A lot of the time, you end up with decisions that look like they were in the realm of palakasan rather than in the realm of what can you offer rather than whom do you know. A lot of the time, there seems to be a change of the rules in midstream for reasons that are not objective and apparent. And these are the things that keep business from flourishing to the extent that the Philippines' potential should be able to realize. We do have a lot of interest in the Philippines given all this good news on the economy, but you know we are still 1/3 of the foreign direct investments coming into other countries, including Vietnam. There is a lot of liquidity in the banking sector, but the types of projects that are coming still do not provide the level of jobs that can diminish unemployment, because perhaps there's still a little bit of reluctance on the part of businessmen due to this continuing Philippine aura of being less predictable. And it is also important for us in the business community to see that this happens pretty soon, and hopefully within the life of this administration, mainly because time and time again the Philippines has been able to demonstrate its ability to go 1 step forward and 3 steps back. And we have experienced administrations in the past that have had good records that look like we are finally moving towards progress, only to be scotched by the next administration that has other plans and other monuments that they would want to build, and therefore throw away everything that has already been put in place, particularly if those things that were put in place were not institutionalized, which is why we think in the business community that the time has come to institutionalize it. And I'll just have to say that it would be indeed a disappointment if it wasn't a crowning achievement of an administration that has brought forward transparency and anti-corruption to the level this one has, not to have put it in place during their time.
Thank you. I have one question for Nadia, and then after that, we'll have 15 minutes to take questions from the floor. Nadia, earlier you mentioned the contradictions in Philippine society. It seems like prospects for passage are very good. The president, even though he said he will never certify it as urgent at the daylight dialogue, he did say it was going to pass. Speaker Belmonte said it's going to pass. What do you fear happening? I mean, which contradiction in Philippine society will rear its ugly head in the next few months, and that may stop the FOI from becoming finally law?
One, I think apathy. If a lot of people don't care enough to support the advocates, to continue the conversations, then it's a natural dying down process that we've seen in a lot of problems that we've had as a nation. They said that we have such short-term memory as a nation, but then I think it has a lot to do with just picking up the pieces, going about doing your own thing and not caring enough. That's one. Another thing is that if there's also that danger of say this law has been passed, there's also that danger of stopping there. And I'll take it from the experience of the United States, for example. Journalists are still banding together. The Center for Investigative Reporting launched a project in 2012 called the FOIA Machine. It's a tool that helps citizens breeze through the red tape of getting the information, or even being charged a lot of money for the information they need. So they put up this database where you can easily find contacts, who to call in certain departments when you need information, forms readily available, because they say that even with the law there, if not implemented properly, we would see, so it's a continuing thing. It's learning won't stop. Caring about this issue will not have to stop even after the bill has passed.
Thank you. I think apathy is the last thing we will use to describe this audience. So now we'd like to open the floor for questions. I think we have about a little under 15 minutes for your questions. Secretary Acosta.
Picking up from apathy, and then earlier on, I think as Congresswoman Robredo spoke about a increasing public clamor for the FOI, notwithstanding the fact that this has been long-standing as an issue for the legislature, particularly from the last 2 or 3 Congresses already to push for. But the question is essentially, I think Attorney Nepo in one of our forums way back, I think it was in the previous Congress on the sidelines, we did talk about whether the challenge is also in the framing of FOI, in the more public framing or messaging of FOI. And I don't think it is the lack of apathy at all for any of these issues. The fact that PDAF, DAP, all of that resonate, even in the D&E classes, is a matter of their own survival. And that's why I think, not because we ran with the president in 2010, but the whole kung walang korap, walang mahirap resonated not just as a slogan, but as a direct understanding that in fact, corruption is tied to poverty, and their state of poverty is tied to corruption. But if corruption, therefore, vis-a-vis that poverty reduction can be tied to FOI, then we might have a better chance of actually having that genuine movement to have it passed. And politicians, short-term creatures that we are, will respond to a clamor that truly is widespread and deep-seated. So parang nagkukulang yata tayo sa framing ng FOI beyond the abstractions of it being a right or a freedom to it being tied to the elemental needs that they have defined those to be. And in all surveys, time and time again, not just over campaigns, it's TPK. And I guess Alan Cayetano, that's why he used that, right? Trabajo, presyo, kita. FOI is not in the radar of even the top 20, 25 issues. The environment is number 22. So, I mean, how do I, because the question relates to me also particularly in the work that we do for environmental protection. How do you make environment and climate change, in fact, framed in a manner that it's really about your trabajo, presyo, and kita in the same manner that FOI should be as well? So I'd like to hear from all the perspectives.
Congresswoman, would you agree, first of all, that frame-wise,
Yeah,
It's been
I
negative.
actually agree 100%. In fact, that was one of the things I think I raised during the earlier meetings with FOI advocates. When I just won as representative of my district, I had the pleasure of meeting some of the FOI advocates before I even started my work in Congress. And that was one of the things that I raised, that I think we are not packaging it enough in a way that ordinary people would be able to relate to it. If people in my district, for example, do not appreciate the fact that I am one of the authors of FOI, because they do not understand it. They think it's a very elitist advocacy. And I think we have to move, extend our efforts further to be able to package it in a way that they would understand that in fact this relates directly to poverty. Corruption relates directly to poverty. In connection with it, my other concern is that even if we pass FOI now, the larger question is that are people prepared to actually use the information that would be available to them? Because I think not. I belong to the school of thought that while we're fighting for the passage of the FOI, there has to be a complementary and parallel effort to educate people that when information is there already, how do they use it to their advantage? And I think we are sorely lacking in that. This campaign is sorely lacking in that. I would have to, we would have to have more people join the advocacy, in the sense that FOI is not just passing the bill into law, but FOI is so much more than that, in the sense that even if we assume that information is already there, we have to educate people.
Thank you. That goes right back to Rizal, right? And the moral formation of the people. Attorney Nepo, if you don't mind, I'll just direct the question once more to Nadia, and then we'll go back to the floor. How do media organizations frame FOI?
I was about to say, when we were doing the PDAF stories before this, the mandate has always been, at least not for ANC, but for our highest rated programs like TV Patrol, the mandate has always
Or
been...
The Voice?
No. Our bread and butter, TV Patrol. The mandate has always been how the story should hit the gut. Maria would know that. Which is why they frame it with titles like Pondo ng Bayan, Kaban ng Bayan, because it has to be something that an ordinary person watching the news, someone who is just watching the news for crime stories or entertainment stories, a story that would actually make them care. So this is Kaban ng Bayan. For the Freedom of Information Bill, again, it is tied to that. We try as much as possible to hit it at a gut level. That has always been how we were told to tell our stories that are abstract, stories that an ordinary person might not relate to, but it is actually very relatable to his daily life.
I guess that's why at the end of the 15th Congress, the FOI story was all about Erin Tanyada running out of time and even of rooms to advance the bill. I think we have a question. Yes.
Good noon. I just wanted to echo the statement of Congresswoman Leni Robredo and Nerik, because for us in Mindanao, where I come from, and you discuss the Freedom from Information Bill, you'll have a very small audience. And I think this is where functions like this and the opportunities like this become very helpful. My question is, beyond the slogans and beyond putting the media tag to the issues to make it acceptable to a larger number of our people, what efforts can be done to get more citizens engaged in the FOI? Consider it's more than 8 years.
Maybe Attorney Nepo, representing the Right to Know Right Now coalition.
Well, just a caveat on the assessment on the failure of, let's say, the public clamor. Because I think it also needs to be realized how strong, and we've seen it, how strong the institutional resistance is to the passage of the FOI bill. Professor Braid was there at the last day of the 14th Congress when we were just one final step to passing this bill, which was the ratification of the bicameral conference report, which they could have tabled from January and with a lot of negotiations. And in the end, it was defeated on a quorum call that was reported out to have been 7 short, but which the video showed there were as many as 9 members of Congress prominently seated and which were marked absent. There was even a time when the microphones were shut off in the open and close session just to prevent the motion to be put on the floor to ratify the bill, which under the rules of the House, every bill that has already been approved on bicameral is in order at any time being the highest stage of bill. So we've seen this, and yet we've seen also bills that I don't know whether it was a product of, let's say, public clamor and such that has been passed also with such speed. For example, sin tax bill was, but I don't think if everyone would be understanding the shift in the sin tax, and it was a product of public clamor. So just a caveat also on a, and we've launched a signature campaign just recently, and if you read Ordinary Citizens in change.org/TAYNA for FOI, they're being asked, ordinary citizens are being asked on why you think it is important. And you would see also that there is a strong understanding of the essence of people's right to information as a matter of accountability for the taxes that we pay the government. There was an SWS survey as early as 2011. More than 60+% of the Filipino population believe the right to information as a right, and its denial should be a punishable offense. So there is as much, in other words, we might be also, my sense is that a balancing of an analysis of why we have been unable to pass this bill. And I would say that there has been in the past years. And the presidency of, the current presidency came on a very strong commitment, and yet we are down to the last two. And while we're happy, there is as much that political reality also on
Attorney,
institutional
quick
resistance.
question. Who was Speaker of the 14th Congress?
Speaker Nograles was the...
Okay. I think there was a question from... I think I should rule out the previous moderator. Veral, if you don't mind, we'll get Secretary Leong first.
Oh, I thought he was going to ask. We have a similar question, but I only have 3 general points. One, concerning the PDAF-DAP disclosures. We should completely divorce that from FIO. You should have that accountable to the public at large because of public funds. So don't give them an excuse to explain all those things, how they use it, even without the Freedom of Information Act. Nevertheless, I'm still for FOI for many other things. On the second point regarding the newspaper, the media, and the private, I'm just curious about the concentration of ownership in the media, and therefore the importance of public involvement as well. And the third point is the Honorable Sir, Bobby, my friend. I fully endorse his point about the disclosure side, and that should not only be in this subject of public funds accountability. A lot of information on markets are not available. If you look at the Philippine Stock Exchange website, you see the price series for 2 years. You go to other countries, you look at the website, the price series go for 6 months, 1 year, 20 years from the beginning. How do you let our students in this country do any analysis of our capital market? There are a lot of deficiencies. Even if you go to the central bank website, you'll not be able to find things you want to see unless you have spatial relationships. So this should be the focus of the Freedom of Information Bill that will mandate all public institutions that generate information to be putting on the web page for all the years they begin. If you go to the Federal Reserve, I can go as far back as 1929 to look at their disasters. In the Philippines, I cannot go beyond 1963 because they say BSP came only in 63. But the system of the Philippines was as far back as 49. So I hope when you put these things on your FOI, have those things in. Lastly, we'd like very much to request our elected people to put the matrix of people who are participating in the formation of the FOI, in summary, their respective positions and the reasons why, so that we can know where the vested interests are coming from, whether they're vested in public good or private interests. Thank you.
Perhaps, Secretary Leong, in fact, that last task should be the responsibility of the media. Yes.
Good morning. I am Nonio Plus from Minimal Government Thinkers. I think one factor in the having an FOI is the length of the law, because the longer the law it will be, the more complicated, because it will be FOI provided that, it provided exempted that. I saw the FOI law in Indonesia. I think there are 30 pages, 40 pages, no? If you have a law which is 50 pages long with implementing rules and regulation 100 pages long, I think that the concern that many people will not bother, because one department can say, oh, we cannot give that information because according to section, blah, 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 we cannot give that. Then another department will say, oh, we cannot give that information because this under section, you cannot give that information because section X will say blah, blah, blah. And so the public complaint will be from when we don't have an FOI law, will change to we have an FOI law, but it's also impossible to get information. So I think that an ideal FOI law would be something like 15 pages and below. Beyond that, it will somehow defeat the spirit of having an FOI.
Thank you. In fact, SB 1733 is about 16 pages, and 3237 is about 15 pages. Other questions? Marie, are you raised your hand? No. Any other questions? Okay, Verhel, please.
I think John has been so prescient. He passed me by because my questions will precisely put the media in the spotlight. Yeah, I have been wondering why there has not been any play-by-play revealing enough account of the deliberations in Congress of the issue. Because to me, this is a good popular education. Why? Because these accounts will reveal who's for the bill and who's for not, and why. And therefore, will as well inspire speculations as to the motives of the Congress people. Because we seem to forget that this is, underlying this issue, is the sub-issue of class and power. So why has the media been short in this regard?
I think that's a very interesting question. I will direct it to Maria. Maybe we'll ask Nadia.
You want to know the truth? No, I'm kidding. Well, one, yes, point taken, and makakarating po. And then again, I think mea culpa. We are still, after all, and I'm not saying that this is a legitimate excuse, but it's what's happening. We are tied to the daily grind, and I think yes, you are right. The onus is on us, as on the beat reporter, to not just report on what happened at committee level, who walked out from where, but yes.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. One quick comment and one question. The comment, we're talking about the scandals that have happened and the PDAF, I think, and whatnot, and whether that would have happened if you had freedom of information or not. Well, basically, these freedom of information laws, like many other, laws in certain nations, they act as inhibitors, right? I mean, if people know that they're going to be caught, or that whatever they're doing is, going to be thrown some light upon, they are prevented from doing that. And Congresswoman Lenny basically said that greed sometimes makes people do a lot of things, but also, the fear of being caught, prevents people from actually doing a lot of those things. Then my question is about this issue of elitism in terms of like these law, in terms of like why you said that people in your district do not understand what's going on or much or do not particularly participate because this is seen as a kind of elitist debate. Is it because in the Philippines, if you don't do something on the ground or that has immediate consequence for the well-being of the people, then the debate is not seen as necessary? Or why is that? I didn't really understand where you were heading with that and why you encountered these problems, basically. And if you explain it, maybe we can actually help from Liberal International send some experts, bring some people, talk to people in the ground on the ground. Thank you.
I think Secretary Neri was a representative of his district before and would know where I am coming from. But I will answer your question by citing what my late husband did when he was mayor of Naga. His first term of office, he already introduced transparency measures. But these measures were not being appreciated by our people until it was translated into very real terms. For example, my husband ordered all the local government units under him, and by local government units, I would be referring to barangays, to fully disclose all financial transactions of their own barangays. So what he did was, even if the barangays were already fully disclosing their transactions, they would do them in ways that were not appreciated also by the village people. So what my husband did next was ask our local sanggunian, our legislative councils, to pass an ordinance requiring all barangay halls to have a transparency board of their own because they do not have access to computers. So each barangay hall had a transparency board of its own wherein all financial transactions are there. But still, only very few village people actually appreciated what that transparency board was for. So the next thing my husband did was organize all the sectors in the barangays. And when I say all, it was really all. Meaning to say, even those who were street vendors, even those who were engaged in the laundry business, mga labandera, even those who were engaged in menial jobs were organized. Because when they were organized, they were actually given a voice and a platform to be able to engage with government. The next thing my husband did was to introduce a Naga City Citizens Charter, wherein all the services of the city were laid down before the constituents for them to be able to push their government to act. But still, it was difficult for people to understand them. So the next thing that the city government did was to actually publish a book. It was a book wherein all the essential services of the city was printed. And it was in a chart form, wherein if you will be applying for the issuance of your birth certificate, these are the things that you are going to do, 1, 2, 3, 4. With number 1, you are going to apply, how much would it cost, who is the person to approach, how much time, what is the maximum amount of time that will be allowed for this particular person to act on your request. And this particular book was given to each and every household in our city. And that was how they were able to understand what transparency was. That was how they were able to understand that they had a stake in transparency. Because when you only talk of freedom of information, when you only talk of the right to know, many people, especially in the DE classes, do not really appreciate it because they do not understand that there is a direct relation of this particular right to poverty. So I think it is the obligation of us who are in government and even of media to make sure that this motherhood terms be translated into very simple terms that the ordinary people will understand, and will understand it in the way that has a direct relation to their everyday lives. So we are challenged to be more creative in this aspect. We have to exert more effort to reach out because really, when we are in our respective districts, they do not, even local media, do not even care about asking us what stage is the Freedom of Information bill now in Congress. They do not they do not really care. What they care about is what government programs are there for them.
Congressman Lenny, what did Secretary Jesse call Naga again?
Maugmang lugar,
Which means
happy place.
a happy place. I actually have at least two more questions to ask, but it's really time for lunch. I would like to thank the panelists for, I think, what was a very engaging discussion. And let's all hope that the FOI law will someday soon find its own maugmang lugar. Okay?